So I finally got some time to sit back and go over the games that I got last year when I stumbled upon Supreme Commander. And when I started playing the multiplayer again, I realized that something really resonated with what Sessler said on XPlay a few days ago. XPlay has a segment called Sessler's Soapbox in which Adam voices his thoughts about anything video game related. In his latest video, he compared Banjo-Kazooie with its sequels and found that the sense of overworld, which gave the illusion of an open world and really a sense of exploration, was lacking in the subsequent titles. Now, the main point of the Soapbox was that the age-old idea that bigger isn't necessarily better holds true in regards to many games. Many people gloated that even the first level of Banjo-Tooie was bigger than all of Banjo-Kazooie, but a lot of the detail and immersion was pretty absent in that game according to Adam Sessler. Anyway, now that I've poorly paraphrased Adam's words, let's get into the actual game. Before we take a look at the gameplay itself, I'd like to show you an interview with Chris Taylor, who really was the creative mastermind behind Supreme Commander at the time.
Now, this genre sort of remained stagnant for quite a while. What are you guys doing to ensure that that doesn't continue?
The first major thing is the full strategic zoom, the ability to pull the camera out from that close-in view that everyone's familiar with to the full theater of war view where you can see it all. You see the whole thing at once. You can keep an eye on everything. You can see that, okay, those ships are making their way across the ocean. My tanks are starting to form up into the formation over here in the right-hand corner. We needed to open up the battlefield so it really becomes a war zone rather than a battlefield. And that way then you can have multiple battles taking place. You can have a little island out in the middle of this big ocean with a nuclear facility on it that you've been secretly building. Really cool stuff can emerge when you get into those kinds of scales.
As you can see, the strategic zoom feature and the theater of war were huge selling points for Supreme Commander. Admittedly, they pulled them off well, but the maps themselves were very bland and similar. And to illustrate this, I'm going to show you a few of the multiplayer maps that were made available with the expansion. Now, what's probably immediately apparent is the symmetry of these maps. They're all incredibly symmetrical in that there's really no variety on either side. It's just a mirror image. And you can see this in all of the maps, really. I know it's meant to make sure that the games are balanced and that one player doesn't have an unfair advantage, but they've been doing this forever. Even StarCraft's maps have more variety than this, and they're over 10 years old now. Okay, we're going to be taking a look at a map called Seeden's Clutch, and this was, in my opinion, the most interesting map at the time. As you can see, every side is completely identical to the other one, and this was the quintessential map at the time. It was used in tons of promotional trailers for Supreme Commander. I'm just going to launch it to show you in detail how bad it really is. Alright, here we go. Probably the most disturbing things at first are the edges of the map. I really don't know why they included them because it completely takes away the sense of immersion that you get in other RTS games. And I've never really seen them in other RTS games. They usually have invisible walls instead. But getting back to what Adam Sessler was saying, despite how big the maps are, the excitement of exploration is gone. Were these edges really a necessary component? It feels like I'm playing on a game board or something, in which case, if you think about it, I'm playing a simulation of a simulation, which isn't immersive at all. I'm just going to do a little checklist to see how innovative the maps in Supreme Commander are compared to other RTS games. My criteria are fairly limited, but I think they include things that constitute good gameplay environments. Having said that, let's start this off. Does Supreme Commander have the critters and doodads on its maps that are characteristic of the StarCraft series? No. Does Supreme Commander have the weather effects that are characteristic of the Command & Conquer series? No. Does Supreme Commander have the day and night effects characteristic of Warcraft 3? No. Does Supreme Commander have at least the detailed map textures that are characteristic of many RTS games? I don't think so. So, if you think about it, the only thing going for these maps is the scope, and I don't think that's a redeeming factor at all. To be fair, I totally understand the hardware limitations that Supreme Commander was facing at the time and still faces today. If they were to add weather effects, for example, it would lag the hell out of our PCs more than the game does already. but I don't think this is a good enough excuse to not be innovative with the maps. The concepts of scope in the theater of war were incredibly revolutionary at the time, but I don't really care about the maps because they all look the same. There's no variety to them. Chris Taylor had a golden opportunity to change the experience that the environment of a match gives you, but he missed it by a long shot. On every map that I play, the aesthetic experience is the same as the last. Supreme Commander placed heavy emphasis on its units instead of the terrain that those units traverse. As such, I feel like I'm playing in a giant sandbox instead of on a planet that matters. Maybe that's not something that's valued by many people, but I think it's a problem that has plagued many RTS games that have come out recently. To be completely honest, I really appreciate what Supreme Commander has introduced to the RTS genre, and the ideas that it has properly executed. However, I feel strongly that the environments are very basic and unrefined. Perhaps these environments are less important in RTS games than in other games like adventure ones, but gamers are constantly raising the bar of expectation for these developers. A lot of people say you can't have your cake and eat it too, but then what the hell is the point of having the cake in the first place? So, there you go, yet another example of how bigger isn't better. Awesome new features in games like Strategic Zoom have to go hand in hand with interesting environments, or else the full potential of them isn't realized.
How you like my groove, Jagal?